All right, welcome back to WVBO, the History Call-In Show. And so we are here today with Dr. Matlock and Dr. Peak, and they have some questions sent in by callers all across, just across the street. Really didn't go that far, but hey, we're here. So we've got some history call-in questions. We'll go to you first, caller. Go ahead, please, caller.
All right, here's Brandon once again from yesterday.
Brandon, we appreciate you.
We really do. He wants to know what the anti-federalists' greatest concern was.
They were concerned about giving up states' rights. States' rights was everything to them. They didn't have because originally you were your state. You were Virginia. You were North Carolina, just like you were back in England. It wasn't until we came together as United States of America that the concept of even us being a country was even thought of. And so they were really concerned about giving up their states' rights. Just like today, the states of Virginia were very different than the state of Massachusetts. And just like today, you wouldn't want one state telling you how to live your life in your state. They were very concerned about giving up states' rights. Thank you, Brandon. You always have the best questions.
Yes.
That was a good one. Isn't he brilliant, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes, he is.
I'm out of that running. All right, Mr. Nichols.
Yes.
Big picture concept here.
Any picture I'm in is a big picture.
Oof. What did Shays' Rebellion lead to?
Shays' Rebellion is a wonderful thing. It led to us understanding that the Articles of Confederation were complete slop and everything. Shays' Rebellion, what it shows us is that all the us being able to print money was worthless if you can't back it up, because the soldiers weren't being paid. They were being paid in American money, but each state only accepted state money. And so it was like being paid in monopoly money. And so when they got upset and everything, that exposed one of the weaknesses. And then once they began to shut down the courts, it exposed the weakness of the fact that states can't call on each other for help. And it exposed the fact of we can have a military, but we can't pay for it. And so if you can have it and can't pay for it, you can't run it. It led to the creation of the Constitution. That's why it's so important.
And kind of following up on that, we have a question from Addie. Thank you, Addie, and thank you for...
Brandon's question's better, I'm sure, but here we go.
How many men did it take to stop Shays' Rebellion?
How many men did it take? Well, they enlisted Benjamin Lincoln and 4,400 soldiers to come put down Shays' Rebellion, which I've always wondered, if you can pay for 4,400 soldiers and for Benjamin Lincoln, why didn't you just pay the soldiers that we needed the money in the first place? But it was them setting it up at the courthouse, which was able to shut them down.
I thought that
Thank you, Brandon, even though that was by Addie.
All right, I have one. Can you tell us who liked the Virginia plan?
The Virginia plan was liked by the big states. Big states, it left more power to the big states because it was going more off population than each state getting an equal share. And Virginia, because of Jamestown, the size of Virginia, you got to remember at this time, Virginia not only included the size of the shape it is, it also included West Virginia at this time. West Virginia does not split off until the Civil War. So it was the largest state we had at that time.
What was the greatest challenge for the delegates?
The greatest challenge for the delegates was balancing the interest of the small states and the big states. The same thing that is really hard for our Congress today is because you've got these states with massive population that they do deserve more of the say, but that doesn't change the fact that there's all these states like Montana, Wyoming, that have less people, but they deserve a right in their say too. So balancing the interest was the hardest part.
I do believe we have an attempt for a trick question.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what state Daniel Shay was representing in his rebellion?
Massachusetts. Daniel was from Massachusetts.
Can't get him.
Just like me, the mass. I may have used that scientific term wrong, but I'm not,
Mass and weight are not the same. We have a song we can teach you about that.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Brandon.
Our sponsor.
Mm-hmm. All right. Name the three branches of government and their purposes.
The three branches of government. You have the executive branch, which is the president. You have the legislative branch, which is Congress, divided into the House of Representatives and the Senate. And you have the judicial branch. Very good. Which none of you need to end up at the judicial branch right now. We're good.
I feel like I'm getting smarter just sitting here. Let's see here. All right. Now this one I always struggled with in school is having to remember dates. Is there any chance?
I never had any dates in school. It's quite, I'm okay with that.
Well, that was a different blow to my self-esteem, but I'll take it.
Okay, thank you.
When did the settlers declare that the state of Franklin was a state? It is multiple choice if you would like those answers.
I do not need those answers. 1796 is when Tennessee became a state, but Franklin becomes a state in 1784. Before that, and am I correct?
He's got it.
All
I don't know
right.
how.
Thank you, Ben. And thank you, Brandon, for that question.
And since we're staying on the numbers, where math kind of goes with social studies as well as science, slaves were counted as what fraction of a person?
3/5 of a person. You had the problem being that the southern states, with having all the slaves and everything, if they were going to vote, they would have been able to make their slaves vote exactly how they did. And so giving them a full person's vote would give the South a whole lot more power because they would have more votes. And if you didn't give them a vote, gave them zero vote, you're saying that they don't matter and they don't care. And so the North couldn't have that, the South couldn't have a thing, and they had to come up with a compromise, giving them half a vote. If it's anything less than half, you're basically saying that they're not a full person. If you give them a full vote, you're giving the South full power. So they had to take a fraction above 1/2 to be able to make both states. Once again, it's the balancing the power. One state wanted one state wanted zero. You have to go with 3/5. You have to come up with that compromise. That's why it's 3/5 compromise.
So which one wanted the 3/5?
Well, it was kind of a toss up with both. You mean which one wanted 3/5 or which?
Yes.
The compromise was 3/5.
Yeah.
The South wanted a full vote at first, because they're getting more votes then. But the North, even though they didn't want the zero vote, it's kind of like a balance because the North didn't want to say they didn't count, but the North wanted them as no votes so that the South is not getting all these extra votes. The South wanted them as a full vote so that they get the votes,
More
but
representation.
they wanted them to say they didn't count. And so it was kind of making both sides go to the middle because
Right.
both sides had interest in either way.
Okay.
And so 3/5 was a good compromise.
And keeping that math theme going, I'm
brother.
sure you already know this one. Do you know how long Franklin was considered a state for?
Franklin was considered a state for 4 years, I believe.
How does
Wow.
he do it? How does he do it?
Awesome. Great job. Here's a question. A good one came in. What came first, the Land Ordinance of 1784 or the Land Ordinance of 1787?
Wow, man.
Are we a joke
That's
to you?
that's a tough one. That's a tough one. That one didn't come from Brandon. I'm just gonna say
Yeah,
we
no,
appreciate you.
Seriously enough, tell the difference, if you don't mind, between the Land Ordinance of 1785 and the Land Ordinance of 1787.
There we go.
1785 was trying to decide how we divide the states up and everything. You just can't go take free land. Everybody's going to get an equal portion and everything. But the biggest problem was 1785 did not address do you have your rights and how do you become a state. And so they realized the gaps. That's the one thing about America, if you can say over and over again, is we will try something like the Articles of Confederation, realize the gaps, realize our faults, and then we'll try again. It's not that we've made huge mistakes. You're starting your own, you're starting a government for the first time. We did not understand. If you were to start anything for the first time, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to learn from it. And they learned that in 1785, they left off how to become a state and do you have rights.
And
Thank you, Brandon.
of course, for our viewers who don't realize that there is a test on Chapter 8 coming up in their very near future, would you like to remind them what our first form of government was called and what started the basis of this chapter?
The Articles of Confederation was our first form of government, and it was started by Ben Franklin. Started before we even became a country. He started working on it in 1775. He saw ahead of the plan that even if we were to declare independence and we were to become a country, you would need a form of government to start with. And so he started early on.
I think you may have touched on part of this, but name a weakness or the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation.
Weaknesses of the Articles of Federation. Pretty much the entire Articles of Confederation, because it did things like you can print money, but states don't accept it. You can have an army, but you can't fund it. You can, each state has their own rights, but every state has to agree to change anything with the Constitution. It was a list of things that sound like good ideas until put into practice.
James Madison was the person that spent a year studying different forms of government. True or false?
True. He was very well prepared to lead the conversation. He had decided that he started looking at all different things like John Locke's treatise of governments. He wanted to know, what did the Locke say? Okay, I'm not to do that song. I can't sing.
So
Is that not what did the Locke
That's
say?
not the song at all, but we'll go with it.
Okay, but he looked at what John Locke said and everything, and started to try and look at all the different forms of government that were thought of. They weren't even being tried because it was still monarchies wherever you were, and so he started taking pieces and parts and trying to put together what he thought would be an excellent form of government. He was very well prepared to be the father of God. That's question 3 on the test, just to help you out.
Spoiler alert. I've got a great question here. So since we have the Virginia and New Jersey plans, even though they were different, was there anything that they had in common?
They both wanted 3 branches of government. They had seen that the weakness with the Articles of Confederation was we did not have a legislative branch. You did not have somebody in charge. And with anything without somebody in charge is chaos.
And then who gets to pick the president?
It's weird. We think our votes decide the president, but the electors decide the president. Your electors are supposed to pick what the state says to pick. There is one time that didn't happen. That happened with George Washington on his election and everything. One man who was told to pick picked somebody else. But after that, every time the state has told them to pick this person, that's who the electors pick.
Okay.
It's the same number of representatives that you have in the House of Representatives.
Now, I did hear a rumor about the Constitutional Convention. What was the original purpose of this convention?
The original purpose was to get together to fix the Articles of Confederation, just like when we got together in the the Continental Conventions. The original plan was to send an olive branch petition to try and figure out taxation with representation. And it got to a point they realized the only thing that would work is completely scrapping all that and starting our own country. The same thing with Articles of Confederation. We tried this as a form of government, and we realized that all you can do is scrap it and start over.
I am getting smarter listening to this.
What were the Alien and Sedition Acts?
The Alien and Sedition Acts. You were not allowed to sedition an alien. That's
not on this test.
I was going to say that's chapter 9. We will get to that. You will find all about sedition aliens.
And it's not having anything to do with Area 51.
No.
Area.
In the short. Oh, no.
Yes,
sorry.
I am. Very good. Go ahead. You can keep asking it. Short and wide.
So, can you tell us any long-term effect that the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, not 5, but 7, had?
Because 7 outlined how to become states and everything. The Land Ordinance of 1787, its biggest impact is it decided how to become states. And so, for quite a while.
Going back to James Madison, why was he called the father of the Constitution? I think you touched on that earlier, but
his middle child he named Constitution. No, I'm sorry. No, that's father of constipation. That's a different thing. Hold on, I'm thinking. No, father of the Constitution is. He was very well prepared. And that whole year that he had spent studying, he was well prepared to help, which is on the test. That's a test question.
Just for the record, one more time, could you tell us who wrote the Constitution?
The Constitution, who wrote it and everything, was James Madison. He came up with the ideas. Now, all his ideas aren't going to be accepted. They're going to be debated about and talked about. And during the thing, even though he was well prepared to lead a lot of the discussions, he sat back and took a lot of notes, and then he would chime in with something very intelligent, lead the conversation again. But he did let everybody have their own opinion, so that once again, it's that merging and working together that makes America work.
On the flip side, instead of he wrote the Constitution, who was it that ended up writing the Articles of Confederation or received most credit for it?
That would be Ben Franklin. Big Pimpin' Ben.
We had talked a little bit earlier about the anti-federalist position, but the federalist position,
They were the ones who wanted to support the Constitution. They wanted the Constitution. Anti-federalist. Are you getting at the anti part? Yeah. They were against the Constitution.
And speaking of the Anti-Federalist, was one of their viewpoints that the executive branch and there being one person in charge would be too much like a king, like what England had?
Yes, that was one of their problems. Is they did not want to go. They were scared to death to go back to having one person in charge because that's what they had seen all their life.
we're going through a lot of these questions. Y'all did a great job, in creating.
Thank you. You
Brandon.
can say it with me. You can say it with me. Say it with me. Brandon. We even have a Brandon.
No.
We don't.
We don't.
Unfortunately, not.
We've had to import Brandons from around the world.
So we have virtual students, and this one is an imaginary student. So that
Who
was,
told you?
yes.
But thank you, Brandon.
And as a follow-up, we did talk about the large states, which plan did they like? But on the flip side, then we have the small states like the
New Jersey plan.
Okay.
And they like that plan better because it was easier to say the way they talk. The New Jersey plans, we're going to have to go, hey, come on, man. What are you thinking about? Bada boom, bada bang. And so that's why they went with the New Jersey plan. Just the way they spoke, it was easier to go with.
Well, since we're already on a
Georgia.
geography tangent, where was the Constitutional Convention located?
Constitutional Convention, well, here's two different things. The Constitutional Convention was located in Philadelphia. The Constipated Convention is right down the hall. There's a bathroom right on your right.
Don't go there.
No, you don't
Don't
want
go
to.
there.
No. You've smelled it. You've smelled it. You know what I'm talking about.
I do believe you mentioned earlier in our legislative branch, it was broken into two houses. Can you tell us if
It's
one
much
of those...
like my cousin. He broke into two houses too.
Ooh.
But he
Sounds
knows the
good.
judicial branch now.
Could you tell us if one of those houses, not your cousins, not your cousins, was based on population?
Yes, the House of Representatives is based on population.
so the big states would like that, correct?
Yes.
Then what is a republic?
Well, a republic is a country led by elected representatives. There's no way we could all get to Washington and vote on each of these things, so we send people to represent us. House of Representatives.
So then the small states like the
Yes.
Virginia plan, because
No, the
No.
small states were New Jersey plan.
yes, and they like the just having two votes per state.
Yes, because then that gave them equal say. But once again, it's that compromise.
Sounds very good. Still looking for a really, really good question here.
Brandon, we miss you, buddy.
We don't play favorites.
All right, here is a different question. In order to pay off war debts, Alexander Hamilton suggested taxing and selling of alcoholic beverages made from grain, including what kind of alcoholic beverage?
It would be the whiskey rebellion is what's going to go on. It's basically for your farmers on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains, the ones in western Pennsylvania, the ones where we were at and everything. They were clearing land, growing corn, and to load a wagon full of corn and take it over the Appalachian Mountains would be a lot of work. And if you can picture a wagon load of corn and what you would make off of that at buying corn for just, cheap for corn on the cob, it was easier to take the corn and distill it into alcohol, because then a load of alcohol in a wagon, you could get a lot more profit by going across and back and forth. So it was basically the ones that it hurt were the poor farmers that were just trying to make a living and needing that money to survive.
Is that on chapter 8?
I believe it's in chapter 9, but hey,
Well,
some of you are ahead of us and we appreciate that.
Yes.
Can you define for us what a federal system of government is?
A federal system is the shared government between the states and the national government.
I never doubted you.
I did a little bit. I did it myself a little bit.
So one other question. Alexander and Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, those are people that were very active at this time. They both were divided on some of George Washington's policies during his presidency. What were some of the things they might have disagreed on? This may be
everything.
Yes.
Well, Hamilton and Jefferson did not like each other at all. In fact, Hamilton goes so far several times because he owned several newspapers. In fact, one of the oldest newspapers still in production today, the New York Post, was what was started by Alexander Hamilton. And each time that Thomas Jefferson would leave and go home to Monticello, the New York Post would have an article about how Thomas Jefferson had died. And so everybody was talking about, oh, we can't, he's gone. We need to look further. And then Thomas Jefferson would come back and realize, nope, still alive. They would then wait for him to leave again, and they would publish that he died again. And so it was a constant, yes, they did not like each other.
And this stems from them being Federalist and anti-Federalist.
Yes, it does. And the starting of political parties. Washington said that the death of America would be political parties starting up. And after him, it started up, and it's still going today to where the parties cannot get along. If we would be a nation who just ran on their ideas of the person, and instead of looking at whether they're Democrat, Republican, Whig, Federalist, anti-Federalist, instead today, and we just listen to their ideas, that would be a better way to elect somebody. But yeah. Washington was right. The death of America will be the political parties.
We have some people that are very excited about Chapter 9, because I do believe
that is Chapter 9 again.
Having those,
so. Can you tell us what exactly the Great Compromise helped decide again, just to review that?
The Great Compromise is going to decide the houses and the legislative branch and how they're picked and everything like that. It was basically taking the Jersey plan and the Virginia plan and meshing them together, because they had a lot together in like the three branches of government. Question on the test. And other things like the judicial branch, they had things in common, but they also had things different, like the number in the executive branch and how to pick the representatives.
And then one more following up on the Great Compromise. What were the four main problems of the Great Compromise?
The four great problems, they still needed to address slavery. They still needed to address the executive branch and exactly how many. There was one group that wanted 5, one group that wanted 1. We went, once again, it's that compromise. We go with 1 and we go with a backup, the vice president. And also how to ratify things.
And I have a multiple choice question here. Somebody was curious if you could, since we've kind of bashed on the Articles of Confederation, could you possibly give us a strength of it? Would you like the choices, or are you good?
Post office is the only thing that it really came about to help out, which honestly, if you stop and think about it, I think this is one thing we never really grasped. Ben Franklin was making all his money off the post office. He was the one who set up the post office. He was the one who had printing presses in multiple towns that would send people around stuff in the papers, and that would pass along the letters. In the Articles of Confederation, he gives that over to the national government. Do you realize he is basically giving away his means of support in order to see our country grow? There is a reason that on his tombstone it says the first American. It's because it's chiseled there, but it's also another reason that it's there.
Well, I also feel like it goes
It's like me. It's like a rock. But more of a boulder. But once again, it's still rock. She could get into a whole metamorphic type thing and everything like that with you. They know the science. I do not.
Well, we are under a lot of pressure.
I do look like a blue rock. If I get huddled up, it's got a blue rock.
Okay. Speaking of blue, here's a blue sticky note. What state did not attend the Constitutional Convention?
Rhode Island. The first time when we had a Continental Convention, it was Georgia who did not show. This time, ironically, Rhode Island. Why would you? I mean, Rhode Island's right up there in the thick of New England, but they thought the Articles of Confederation could work, and no, it didn't. You were wrong, Rhode Island! You were wrong! Still hold a little anger about that.
I couldn't tell.
That's why you have no football team! Sorry, I'm done now. I'm better. I'm better.
That may have been a low blow, not just because they're a small state. All right, and we are getting down to our last few questions here. Since we've been talking about the Articles of Confederation, what is a confederation?
A confederation is a group of nations or a group of people. It's a group that comes together to make a nation and everything like that. It's for a purpose and everything like that. So, a confederation.
Fantastic.
And in what year did the Constitutional Convention take place?
What year did the Constitution? 1787, am I correct?
Yes.
Am I correct? Bam!
Nailed it.
And that's why I make the little money.
Going back, that's when the preamble.
Yeah, 1787, I'm told,
yes,
our founding fathers all.
Yes,
Thank you, Schoolhouse Rock. Most people do not know Schoolhouse Rock was written by Brandon.
Yes.
There's so much that Brandon does. He's so underrated.
He really is.
I was going to make some songs, but they called it Schoolhouse Boulder. They were just,
And of course, I saved the most difficult question for last. After the Constitutional Convention and the compromise of how to elect our executive branch, who was elected to the seat of president first?
The first president, hold on, let me do my song. Washington would be president. He was president. You need to know he was president of the convention and then becomes president of the United States also. He did not come to the convention thinking of being president of the United States, because when they came to the convention, we had no executive branch. He came there because of his just love for the country and why he is the father of our country. And they knew that he could lead the men in this discussion and everything.
And there he is. He's a brainiac. He's a brainiac on the floor, and he's answering questions
brainiac,
like he
brainiac
never has before.
for sure.
I mean,
Pour the water. I'm ready for it. Thank you, Brandon. We will see you next week. Whoa!
More importantly, thank you, Mr. Nichols. We miss you guys.
We
see
do.
you soon.
We do. We miss you very much.
See you soon.